Greetings basement dwellers and welcome to the best part of any new Arkham expansion, a preview of some hot new characters. We are still waiting for our copy to arrive, so you will have to make do with some electronic images in the meantime. Investigator expansions generally alternate between 5 and 6 investigators. And as the preceding Scarlet Keys had 6, we have 5 this time, strictly 1 per class. They are Wilson Richards the Handyman, Kate Winthrop the Scientist, Alessandra Zorzi the Countess, Kohaku Narukami the Folklorist, and Hank Samson the Farmhand. 1.5 of these are brand new and 3.5 have been seen before. Wilson, Kate and Hank are all recycled, having appeared in previous Arkham Horror games as playable investigators. Kohaku is brand new and never seen before, apart from the reveal on the Drawn to the Flame podcast, and Countess Alessandra Zorzi was the protagonist in the first ever Aconite Books tie-in novel, Wrath of Nakai, back in 2020. She has appeared in several more since then, and with future adventures in the works, she looks to be a natural choice to join the roster. All of them have a deck size of 30 cards, apart from Hank the Hunk, which has 35. Generally, each has a single class for deck building, but can take cards from other classes if they have certain traits. Wilson is a Guardian that can take Guardian cards up to level 4, unlimited tool cards, which is stuff like magnifying glass and lockpicks, and up to 5 other cards with the improvised and or upgrade traits of level 0 to 1, of which there aren't that many at the moment. Kate is a Seeker that can take all Seeker cards, science-traded cards level 0 to 4, most of which are Seeker anyway, and Insight cards of level 0 to 1, of which there is more variety. Alessandra is a Rogue that can take all Rogue cards and all Parlay-traded cards, nice and simple. There aren't any! What it actually says is cards with Parlay. This is much like Carolyn Fern stipulating cards that heal horror, so you are looking for cards with Parlay in their text box, usually as an action designator. Kohaku can have Mystic cards level 0 to 3, all Blessed and Cursed traded cards, of which there are loads, as well as Occult cards at level 0, which is less than we thought. Finally, Hank the Plank gets access to all Survivor cards and up to 10 other Innate and or Spirit traded cards level 0 to 2. Health and sanity wise, it looks like 14 is the magic number. Wilson is an 8-6, which makes sense as a Guardian. Kohaku is a 6-8, which is handy as a Mystic. Kate is also a 6-8 and the Countess is a 7-7. The only exception is Hank the Yank, which is a mere 5-5. No, wait, a 4-6. A 6-4! Definitely a 6-4. Are you having a stroke? I'm not sure. Looking at the rest of the stats, Wilson has 12 points divided into 4 threes, as clearly he relies on his tools rather than his natural gifts. Kate also has 12 points, but 2 4s in agility and intellect. Kohaku has another pair of 4s, but this time a 3 and 1 instead of a double 2. Maybe don't take him into the Forgotten Age, just saying. Finally, Hank the Dank has the only 5 amongst these investigators. In an idea blatantly stolen from Pokemon, Hank can evolve mid-game into one of 2 more powerful forms. If he would be defeated by damage and or horror, then you remove all tokens and replace his base card with one of his evolved versions. And if you want to hurry this along, you can assign damage or horror dealt to ally assets or other investigators at his location to him instead. Assistant Hank becomes worse at fighting but better at almost everything else, and now favours sanity because when you place a horror on him you may draw a card, but you can no longer heal him of either damage or horror. Warden Hank has a 6 in combat. Because we all know the secret to great game design, kids, is to make the numbers bigger. Unless we've been Migo mind wiped, this is the first investigator with a 6 in any stat. Not even those pesky mystics have had more than 5, and other than his intellect, all the other stats are still decent. So you can potentially evade before you deliver the Hank Smash. This version now favours health, and when you place damage on him, you may gain 2 resources. Remember folks, the swirly arrow is an optional reaction, which you don't need to trigger if you wanted to keep your resources low for something like Dark Horse. As evolved Hank can't be healed, his Elder Sign ability allows him to move either 1 damage or 1 horror respectively to an asset he controls. Don't forget these need to have either health or sanity printed on them if you want to do this. His signature bonus card allows him to move up to 2 damage and or horror onto an enemy when he engages that enemy, which sounds great but can be tricky to set up. His signature weakness spawns an enemy from the encounter deck which gains the new keyword from this cycle, elusive. It attaches to that enemy and Hank the Tank must take one direct horror each round it is in play. Okay, let's try and find a simpler investigator. Wilson reduces the resource cost of the first tool asset he plays each round by 1, and gets a bonus to tests made using that tool, so it's sledgehammers for days. And he can swap tools from play to your hand if you are lucky enough to see an Elder Sign. His signature bonus card allows him to repeat an action ability on a tool he has just used for maximum sledgehammer. His signature weakness reduces his base stats to 0 when triggering abilities on assets, but only takes 2 actions to discard. Bless and Curse tokens return, and Kohaku will add one of either to try and balance out the Chaos Bag at the start of his turn. He can then remove 2 of each to take an additional action. His signature bonus asset allows him to forcibly draw a Bless or Curse token for any test taking place at his location, whichever type there are currently more of in the Chaos Bag, and his weakness is an enemy that will attack anyone for 2 horror if they draw a Bless or Curse token during a skill test at its current location. Alessandra is the Parlay Queen with an additional action available each turn to parlay with, and a free ranged evasion if she draws the Elder Sign. Her signature bonus card is an event that attaches to an enemy and turns her free parlay into an investigate, evade, or to move the enemy to a connecting location, giving her a remote spy she can pilot around the scenario, until she fails one of the tests. Her weakness is an enemy that accumulates doom every round she parlays, whether successful or not, and she can't parlay with him. Physically, not much of a challenge, but a real thorn in her side. Finally, we have Kate Winthrop the Scientist, which gives you a whole engine building minigame involving clues and assets and all sorts. Bonded cards make a return in this expansion as we saw with Hank the Crank, and Kate also has some of her own. Her Investigator ability is a free triggered action that allows her to move one of her clues onto one of her science or tool assets, which will be dropped at her location if the card ever leaves play. She also starts with her signature asset in play, this way up. When you add a clue to the inactive Flux stabilizer, you will get to shuffle one of the 2 bonded etheric current cards into her deck, depending on whether you want to use her intellect stat for a fight test or an evasion test at some point in the future. This also flips the Flux stabilizer to its active side, which has a reaction ability that gives you +2 to your next skill test when you place a clue onto an asset you control. Except you can't use her ability to put a second clue on an asset, so you need to make sure you have another one out. And to get rid of the clue on Flux Stabilizer, you either need to use her Elder Sign ability, or wait for the etheric current to come up and play it, which also flips Flux Stabilizer back to its inactive side, as well as returning any clues back to Kate. So the chances of you getting more than one etheric current into your deck at once don't look great. You will be genuinely glad to have your weakness turn up so you can get some of your clues back to advance the act deck, although Kate can now spend clues on her assets. If we wanted to have our brains melt out of our ears, we would play Brass Birmingham instead. Honestly, just put Mind Over Matter into any Daisy Walker deck and have a much easier time of things. I quit. This game is crazy. Stop being a diva. I'm off. This expansion's probably given me an ulcer anyway. From now on, it's just going to be videos about card sleeves. You big baby. Shove off.